right, let's kind of finish up. So we've talked about drawing using things like the brush tool, the paint bucket. We talked about the different types of vector elements, shapes and objects, and working with layers and such. Let's talk about how to bring some elements into Adobe Animate to help us draw. Okay, so a lot of times, when you Illustrate, you're going to want to have like a reference image, right? You might draw something on a piece of paper and you want to bring it into Adobe, you want to bring it in to use it as a reference. So how would we do that with Adobe Animate? Well, first you'd have to have a sketch, okay? So I've already given you a sketch. Let's pretend this is a sketch that I did with pencil or graphite. This could be, you drawing on a piece of paper, documenting it with your phone, right? You could take a picture of it with your phone and then, send that photo to yourself, download it or something like that. By the way, Adobe can really only work with standard image formats, like for instance, you know, if you want to bring in a JPEG or a PNG file or a GIF file, you won't be able to bring in proprietary formats like an HEIC, which is an Apple-based product format. If that occurs, what I would suggest is I give you guys a link here that can help you, which is this free convert website. And what it will do is you can upload any image format and convert it to any other image format. So, it's a free service. You don't have to pay for anything. So if you had like, for instance, let's say you took it with your iPhone or your iPad and you have an HEIC and you can't bring that into Adobe Animate, you could upload it to this site, convert it to a JPEG or a PNG, and then bring it into Adobe Animate. Okay. So I have this sketch file. Where is it? There it is. I'm gonna try to bring this into Adobe Animate to work as a reference. So I have my layer here, and I'm gonna go to File, Import, Import to Stage. This is our stage, and then let's find the file. So I'm gonna go under Sketches and then grab the sketch file. Can I not bring in a JPEG? Interesting. All right, I'm gonna bring it into the library. And actually, let me do that again. I'm going to do a file, import to stage, and then let's set this to all files. I don't know why this is being kind of weird. It was set to Illustrator. I'm going to set this to all files and then hit open. And that's going to bring in my file. I'm getting this because I already imported it once. So this is my image. I can use my selection tool to select and move it around. If you want to resize it, you could use the free transform to scale it or to rotate it or to skew it. If that's what you want to do. I kind of liked it at this size. I'm just going to keep it that way. So this is my image. I would probably give this a name like reference and then lock it. That way you don't accidentally move it when you're using it as a reference. And then I would just create like a layer above it to be my layer that I want to draw on. If, what I could do, you know, so what I'm going to do now that I have this as a reference is, let's say I'm just going to draw some black lines here for now, but I could kind of, use this as a reference. This is not the best drawing, but I'm using this as a reference here. maybe use like a more detailed. All right, so I'm just using this as a reference. Turn this off. There's my reference. Okay. So that is how, you can bring in an image. You can import it to the stage. Another way to do it, instead of importing it to the stage, is import it to what's called a library. So file, import to library. The reason why you might want to do this is it gives you a copy of it that you can just bring in multiple copies of. Another reason why this might be useful is once you bring this in, maybe not. No, actually, that's not. So yeah, you can bring it in as to bring it in and have copies of it. Either way is fine. Okay. The next thing I'm going to talk about is, let's say, Adobe Animate is a vector-based program. Okay. Let's say you have experience using Adobe Illustrator. Okay. Now, if you don't have experience with Adobe Illustrator, that's fine. Don't worry about it. You don't have to. But what I'm going to do is open Adobe Illustrator, and then I'm going to open up a Illustrator file. So I'm just going to go under here and import character.ai. Cute little avocado. I'm just going to highlight this. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, I don't really like drawing in Animate. I like drawing in Illustrator better. Okay. What you could do is you could draw it in Illustrator, and because they're both vector-based programs, you could bring it into Adobe Animate. So I'm in Adobe Illustrator. I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to go to Adobe Animate. I'm going to go to exercise 23. And I'm just going to literally paste this in, paste in center. When you get these options here, just make sure you paste using AI importer preferences. Okay. And then there's your item. You could use the free transform to scale it, move it around, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So you can do that. This is also in case you don't have, if you use a different program. So for instance, if you use Figma or some other vector-based program that's not Adobe, you can also use an SVG to copy and paste. So, anything that's vector can be copied from one vector program and be brought into Adobe Animate, just like I copied the file or the character from Adobe Illustrator, and I'm going to bring it in. I brought it into Adobe Animate here, and then I could, animate with it now if I wanted to. Final thing is how to export. Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, we have a .fla file, right? We might want to .fla will only work in Adobe Animate, which means anyone who has our FLA file would also have to have Adobe Animate, the program. Most people don't typically have that program. It's in a common program. So it's better to convert this to like an animate, to a movie file, or, something like, all right. Sorry, I had to take care of something for a second. So we're exporting this graphic to an image. The reason why we might want to do this, we might want to share this with someone, attach it to like an email or, something of that nature. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go to File, and we're going to export this. Next week, we're going to be using this to export our Animate projects as videos. For now, we're just going to export this as an image. So you could go to Export Image. When you do that, you're going to get something that looks roughly kind of like this. This would allow you to set this as a JPEG, a PNG, or a GIF file. This is actually ways of, playing around with the compression to make the file bigger or smaller. I'm actually just going to use the legacy, even though it's legacy, meaning it's an older version. I think it's better, in my opinion, for exporting images. But when you export legacy, you're going to get something that looks like this. This allows you to export an image. I'm just going to call this character export. Okay. This is the name. You can choose the location of the file, which in this case, I put it on the desktop computer. I'm going to export this. You can choose the format as either a JPEG, GIF, or PNG file. If you want to keep this as a vector file, meaning maybe you want to bring it into a program like Adobe Illustrator or Figma or something, you could export it as a SVG. Okay, but keep in mind that non-vector programs sometimes have trouble with vector files, so I'd recommend, if you want to just give it to someone to load in an email, probably like a JPEG is probably the best way to go. So I'm just going to use JPEG. I'm going to hit save. When you do that, these are your dimensions. These are the default dimensions of the project file. You could change that if you wanted to. This is the resolution. I'm not going to get really into resolution. This has more to do with printing. But essentially, if you were doing a print, meaning you were going to print it on the physical paper or canvas or something, you might want to export this as 300 DPI or dots per inch. This is more of a print design kind of situation. The major thing is just make sure it's set to quality 100%. That means you're, max quality. Full document size, hit OK. And then let's go find that file. I need to close a couple of things here. All right, so there's my file. This is a JPEG. You could attach this to an email. You could bring it into a program like Photoshop if it's open, or some other related graphic design program. Okay. So that's, how you can import images like a sketch that you could use as a reference. You can import other vectors that, if you've used other vector drawing programs, you can import those into Adobe Animate, or how to export. So this is a vector, and we've exported it from a vector format into a raster pixelated format that could then be brought into something like Adobe Photoshop or some other program and then edit it if that's what we wanted to do.